The invitation was sent to John Sullivan to attend the alumni weekend for the Atlanta Braves. Every year, the Braves have this thing, and they do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they bring in a lot of old players, and these guys sign autographs, and they play in like an old-timers softball game, and they hang out, have a good time, and just kind of relive some of the days gone by, sometimes when they were playing. So it's a lot of good stuff to be involved in. So this invitation was sent out, and the invitation was received, and everything started going as it should. They went out on the field and played a softball game. They had these lines that you could stand in. The players were behind the table, and people signed autographs. My brother even had one of these autographs. He had it on a piece of paper, and he sent it to me, and it said John Sullivan had signed that autograph. The players are out on the field, and they're introduced, and he raised his hat as John Sullivan was introduced. And then as they were playing this softball game, one of the guys said, "Hey, John Sullivan, what year did he play for the Braves?" And Bobby Cox, the longtime manager for the Braves, said, "Well, John Sullivan played for the Braves in the late 60s or early 70s, but that guy right there is not John Sullivan." So what ended up happening was, after the game, a lot of the players went out and hung out together, and they said, "Hey, let us ask you a question. We talked to Bobby Cox, and he said that you're not John Sullivan." And he said, "Well, you're right." He said, "What happened was, I received this invitation, and it came to my house, and I just decided I'm going to go with it." So for a day and a half, this guy goes to Atlanta. He is an imposter for John Sullivan, and he enjoys all the perks of being a former Major League Baseball player, and just kind of goes with it and pulls off a wonderful stunt for a day and a half. I want to start with that this morning because I wanted to think about, for just a moment, the fact that the world is full of imposters. I mean, if you don't believe that, just look on social media, right? I mean, you look at some of our celebrities, and sometimes you'll read something, and you're like, "Man, I can't believe he said that or she said that." And you're like, "Oh man, I gotta check this a little bit more." And then you start to dig a little bit deeper, and you see that that's not the real person. It's a fake account that's been set up under that person. I got a friend, and this person's always said, "Hey, I'm friends with so-and-so, and I'm friends with so-and-so." And I'm like, man, there's no way that person has a Facebook account that's just out there that you're friends with. But if you notice, even our president, if you notice his little symbol, it says @ the real Donald Trump. And we see a lot of those people who are in positions of power or authority or just famous, who have that idea of being the real on their account. Now, why did I start with that? I started with that because I want us to kind of shift to where we are in this series of lessons. The real Jesus. Because I want you to ask yourself, the Jesus that you have been taught about, the Jesus you've accepted, the Jesus who is kind of the picture of who he is in your mind, is he the real Jesus? Is your Jesus the real Jesus? So as we answer this question this morning, who is your Jesus? I want us to start with a video. I want us to look at this video from Luke chapter 15. Verses 11 through 32, and then when we get finished with that, we're going to go back and read verse 1 and 2 at the beginning of Luke 15. So let's notice this together.
A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the portion of the goods that falleth to me." And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country. And he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave to him. And when he came to himself, he said, "How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare? I will go to my father. I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants." And he arose and came unto his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son." But the father said to his servants, "Bring forth the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found."
And they began to be merry. Now his eldest son was in the field. And as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked him what these things meant. And he said unto him, "Thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound."
And he was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And he, answering his father, said, "Lo, these many years do I serve thee.
Neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends.
But as soon as this thy son was come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots,
Thou hast killed for him the fatted calf." And he said unto him, "Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad. For this thy brother was dead and is alive, and was lost and is found."
So we listen to that story, and we live in such a wonderful time in history. I'm a visual learner, and it's awesome to be able to read it, but I think it's awesome also to be able to see it and allow the story to come to life. And we hear that story, and it paints so many pictures in our mind, but I want us to go back and consider why Jesus told the story to begin with. And I think we find that answer in Luke chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. It says, "Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them." Now, you think about story for just a moment. My favorite writer is Rick Bragg. He grew up over in Jacksonville, Alabama. And one of the reasons I like Rick Bragg so much is because he tells stories about this area, about the area kind of where I grew up. And as I read his books, I see those places in my mind because I've been there before. He's a journalist. He's been all over the world. And he said, one of the things that I found, he said this in several of his books, is that the people of the southern Appalachian foothills, our people, my people, are some of the greatest storytellers in the world. Now you think on that for just a moment. You think about your grandparents, your grandmother, grandfather, maybe your parents, and their ability to tell a good story. My great-grandfather was a great storyteller. I remember sitting out on his back porch and listening to him tell stories. My grandfather, one of the reasons that I miss him so much is because of his stories. And he would tell some of these stories, you know, several times. I've probably heard some of his stories 10 times in my lifetime, but I never got tired of hearing them because he would make them come alive, just so animated. He would add little things to the story. And you think about being able to grow up in a culture where story is just a part of who we are. And you think about Jesus' culture for just a moment. You think about how important story was for them. Now, you and I, we're holding this, right? And we've got this story recorded for us. Well, they didn't have this. They didn't have any books back in the day. So if they wanted to know about what had happened in their world, they learned that through story. So Jesus sits around and he tells these stories. We read about his parables. We read about other stories that he told. And if we read those, we say, okay, I get a little bit of meaning here. But I don't think that's all we need to do. Because the whole idea is for us to understand what he's truly saying. And if we're going to understand Jesus' parables, his teaching, we got to dig into them and say, what is really there? So that we can understand what it meant to his original audience, who he was addressing there, what he was trying to say to them. And then if that's going to change our lives, we're going to allow that word to come into us, come into our hearts and take root and change who we are. We've got to make a bridge to say, how does that word from yesterday apply to us today? So that's what we're going to do with this story from Luke chapter 15. We're going to dig into it a little bit more and see that there's just so much here. One thing that I want to point out, there's three points, I guess, here as we start out that I want us to really think about as far as the story is concerned. But let's start with older men. The older men in that culture never ran. Running was not an honorable thing to do within that culture. And I'll just be straight with you, I would have loved to have been a part of that culture. But think on this for just a moment. Keep that in mind, kind of put it in the back of your mind, because we're going to talk about that in just a second. Second thing I want to talk about is the son, and I want to make two different points about him here. In that culture of the day, the son never asked for an inheritance. Never. Because there were two things that were thought of if a son asked for an inheritance. First of all, it was thought to have put a curse on your father if you asked for that inheritance. Second thing was, it was like walking up to your dad and saying, hey, Dad, you know what? I wish you were dead. You know, I want my money, so the only way I know I'm going to get that is if you die. I mean, you think in our culture today, most of us have parents who have a will. We're written into that will, hopefully. Have you ever thought about going up to your mom or dad and saying, hey, Dad, how much longer do you think you're going to live? We would never think to do that, would we? Why? Because we love them. The whole idea is not that you want their possessions, their money. You want them here in this world. So I try to tie that to this story to see how disrespectful it would have been for him to go up and say that. But that's not all about the boy here. Another thing about the boy was, within that culture, if you were the one who stepped out and asked for your inheritance, there was also a thing that happened that didn't happen. Because you asked that. The boy who would ask for his inheritance never went home. It was just not something that occurred. Because you had this label that was put on you, this shame that you would endure. So you knew once you asked for that you never would go back to your hometown. Think of everything you would lose as a result of that. The friendships, the family contacts. Because, hey, I want money, I'm greedy, I'm going to step out here and get this, and I'm going to do away with everything that has meant so much to me up to this point in my life. So you think about this older guy, this older man running, you think about the son asking for his inheritance, and then you think about the fact that he could never return. But then you read a story. And within this story, we see a boy going home. And we see an old man running down the road, breaking these cultural ideals, these accepted standards. And when I see that, I can't think but, because that's the whole idea. And as we think about the real Jesus, that's what I want you to put to the test today. I want you to put to the test what you have accepted as cultural standards, what you have accepted as things of pride and dignity. And then let's look at who the real Jesus is. Because the real Jesus did not come into the world to reinforce traditions, dignity, pride. He came into the world to do something different. We hear this story, and we think about God going to the prodigal and receiving him. And that's the whole idea a lot of times that we see in the story as far as the way that it's preached. There's really nothing wrong with that because you can get that from the story. But the original intent for the original audience was to see Israel as the rebellious child who returns to the Father and is restored to its rightful place. Now think on Israel for just a moment. Go back to the Old Testament. We remember the nation of Israel. God said, hey, these are going to be my chosen people. These are the people who are going to do what's right. I'm going to have them as kind of a point of pride in the world. And then Israel launches out, right? And they get out and they start complaining and griping. And hey, I know we were slaves over here and we wanted to be free, but this is taking a long time. How much longer? It's like being with our kids in the car going to Florida. How much longer? Hey, can we stop and use the restroom? When are we going to eat? You know, this stuff over and over and over. And you see that these children of Israel were murmuring and moaning and complaining. And finally God just said, you know what? I'm fed up with this. I'm tired of you saying, hey, the old life is better than this life. You're on the way to the promised land. You're on the way to have everything you've ever wanted. But you can't endure. You got to keep looking back and saying, hey, I'd rather be back in slavery. Because at least there, we were fed. And you continue on and you see finally they get to the promised land and they get the thing that they had always wanted, the thing that had been promised to them for years and years and years. And things go pretty well for a little while. And then what happens? We see them back and forth, back and forth. It's not long before they say, look at all these other people around us. They have a king. So they tell God, hey, we want a king. And God says what? No, you don't want a king. Yeah, we want a king. So finally God says, okay, you can have a king, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're going to wander away from me just like everyone else in this world does. And we see this process of one king coming in and wandering away, and then another king coming in and bringing them back. And Israel's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then Jesus comes into the world. And Jesus comes in and he says, hey, my whole point is to come here and to bring spiritual Israel, the kingdom of God, back to this world. And that's the idea that we see here. Is God coming into the world and saying, hey, I want you to understand the point of this story. I've come back to put love and joy and peace, all those things, back in this world. That's the point of the story. And that is the reason for the party. So, you think about a party for just a moment. A party for Israel's return was not a problem with these people that he was talking to. The problem with the people that he was talking to was with the fact that Jesus was not just celebrating with the religious elite, but he was celebrating with the marginals, the prostitute, the tax collectors. And these spiritual elites, these people who had it all together, who wanted to let you know how righteous they were and how godly they were and how you ought to look up to them because they were so spiritual. They would say things like, hey, this is Israel. These are God's chosen people, the elite. But Jesus, you hang out with these rough people. People that no one else in our society has anything to do with. And he said, well, I'm ushering in the kingdom of God. I want you to understand that. And these people these rejects, these prostitutes, these drunks, these people that no one has anything to do with, I want you to understand that they are mine. And all of a sudden, these elites are like, are you serious? They get in? Are you kidding me? Those people get in? They're going to be a part of us? How many in today's religious world have thought the same thing? How many of us were taught something similar? And I remember specifically growing up in the church where I grew up, there would be people in our society. We had a very small town, probably 2,000 or less, so you pretty much knew everyone. And you start to talk about someone, hey, I think we need to reach out to him if you have to come to church with us. Well, he needs to quit drinking first. He's a drunk. Everybody in town knows that. And then divorce. Well, she's been married 4 times. She's not a part of us. Is that the kind of people we want to bring in here? I've heard that. Have you heard that? What kind of attitudes does the religious world have toward people who struggle in this world today? People who didn't make very good decisions, people who dropped out of school, people who are crack addicts, people who've been to jail 5 times, people whose name we've seen in the paper and put on the front of that Roman record thing that's got to be some kind of violation of our rights. Are there people that you exclude? Just by the way you judge them. In your mind already, you know that kid that your children plays baseball with, or they're in a band with, you know that their parents are not a candidate for what we're doing here. Be honest. How many people do you judge? How many people do you exclude just by the way you judge them? Let's go back to the story for a moment. Dignity, pride, unwritten rules, traditions. And then Jesus comes in and he says, who cares? Who cares about all that stuff? Why are you so fascinated with all that stuff? Because I have come to set up the kingdom of God. I am here to bring peace and love and joy and second chances to people. Why are you so concerned about the things that the world is looking at? I remember going into churches and opening up a psalm book, and there'd be just a big black X through that. And we don't sing this song. And you just say, why don't we sing this song? Oh, because it's got a few words that we can't agree with. Hey, preacher, what version you use? Oh, okay. All right. And we get so caught up in these things. Things that make no difference whatsoever. See, I think there's a challenge before us today to see that Israel, the son that was dead, is alive again. This very thing that you, the religious elites, have been waiting on is right here before you. And you can't even get excited about it. You won't even come in from the outside and join the party. Let's think on that for just a moment. I don't know what kind of fellowship you grew up in. I know that we have a ton of different backgrounds here. I'm thankful for a lot of stuff that I learned growing up. I'm thankful for the fact that my fellowship taught the Bible. I'm thankful for the fact that we did a lot of good in our communities, did a lot of good mission work. I had a lot of good Bible class teachers. I had a lot of good people that influenced me over the years. And there's so many elements of it that I'm thankful for. But there's so many elements of it as well that I just cannot accept as my own. And one of those is the fact that we pretty much made fun of people who got excited about Jesus. They're fanatics. I don't want to be like those freaks over there. What's wrong with those people? So any kind of celebration, any kind of celebratory worship, raising hands, clapping, really getting into it, it was something that we looked down upon. We said, hey, what are those people doing? They're just trying to draw attention to themselves. And I bought that for a long time and believed it and preached it. And now I've changed my mind on that because I see what God is doing. And I see people in the Word that Jesus went to who no one in society would have anything to do with, and he brought that person their sight back, or he made that person healed, or healed that person, or he made that person hear again. And what did these people do? They jumped up and celebrated. Peter and John are going into the temple, and there's a guy who's sitting outside, and he cannot walk, and they put their hands on him and pray over him, and he's able to lift up. And what does he do? He runs into the temple celebrating, jumping up and down with joy. And I see this whole idea of the kingdom being here and people needing hope and Jesus being that hope. And folks, we've got to be able to get to a point in our lives where we're okay celebrating that. Where we come into the party and we sit down and we say, we're here because of Him. We're here because of what He has done and what He is doing. And you look around at all these people in this room that He's brought hope to, that He has healed. You see that this is a time where we celebrate brokenness that's been overcome. We live in the South, and man, sports is a part of our culture, and there's no one in this room likes sports more than I do. But it's really sad to me that I get so fired up about Auburn football. And I can't get nearly that fired up when I come in here about the God of the universe. The party. The celebration. What does that mean to you? Well, let's take it a step further. Let's ask this, because you've got this party going on, and a lot of people are going. Why aren't you going? Why are you excited about it? Why aren't you celebrating? Are you more worried about who is on the guest list than you are about the dead bones that Ezekiel prophesied about coming back to life? Are you walking through life celebrating? Are you keeping an eye on who's getting what you're getting, but who's not nearly as worthy as you are? Are you celebrating, or are you making sure that all the rules are followed? There's one more aspect of this story that I don't want us to leave out. And it's that one that I know my position well on. I know how I feel about the villain. Sometimes you get a little confused about the villain. Yesterday we were hanging out and Sam said, hey, that new King Kong movie's coming out. And I said, yeah. Well, I think it's rated R. So can I see it? And I was like, I don't think so, bud. Well, why not? I think it's just some violence. That's what he said. He said, well, it may be PG-13. What about that? I said, no, buddy. I said, it's for people 13. He said, well, I'm 6. We're not doing this, man. We'll check it out. Maybe in 7 years, you'll check it out. But it sent me back to a place. I remember as a kid watching the old King Kong. And I remember him climbing up on that building. And he was the villain. He was the one that kind of terrorized the whole day. Everybody was scared of him. And I remember him getting shot. And man, I felt sorry for him. Because by that point, I was pulling for the bad guy, And that's the way it is a lot of times as we go through a story. But we read this one, and I've just never been able to pull for the bad guy. Because there's one there. The brother in the story. What's his deal? Who does he represent? Well, he represents the Pharisees. the scribes. See, they'd rather keep things the way that they are, keep their dignity, their traditions, their misunderstandings, than they would to follow the God-man sent into the world to restore Israel. But you think on him for just a moment. Do you dislike him? I do. So I think maybe one of the reasons I dislike him is because I see a lot of myself in him. But you think about this guy. I mean, you know, your brother's gone away. He's been gone for a long time now, and he's back, and he's sitting there, so he's so militant. He's like, hey, I'm just not going to do anything. I'm not coming into the house. And I think about those people sitting in that crowd that day that Jesus was trying to teach. And I think about how they're saying, my dignity, my system, that's what's most important to me. You're talking about your kingdom. There's no way I'm coming into that if these people are a part of that. So I say all that to say this. Are you a system guy? Or are you devoted to the man? Because see, the whole thing for me is, when I look at the system, and I see a system that encourages and teaches me to do things, and trains me to do things, and trains me to exclude people, and to turn my back on people, and to make fun of people who are spiritual. And to me, that's a broken system. A system that tells me to do anything that Jesus would not do is a system I cannot be a part of. But the beautiful thing about the God we serve is he's not like us. Because see, I have a bad attitude toward that older brother. Are there people that, if they call and said, hey, you know what? I don't want to come to your stinking party. I hate you guys. You live in a terrible part of town. I'm not parking my car over there. People ride by and say, oh, he's over at their house. Then all of a sudden you get some momentum going. This thing gets pretty popular. And then they call you back and they're like, hey, is it all right if we come by? And you're all like, yeah, sure. But then you tell the guy who's at the door checking everything, hey, when they come by, I want to let them in. And then you go out there and you kind of look through the window and you're like, I'm not in that. No, you want to be in? You know? Is that the way you want to be sometimes? Because that's kind of the way I want to be with this guy. Hey, you have such a bad attitude. I don't care if you come to the party. As a matter of fact, I don't want you at the party. Man, this is where God teaches me a lesson over and over and over again. Because the cool thing about Jesus is this group of people who were before him, this group of people who brought their attitudes, their bad attitudes before him and inspired him to take this parable and put it before them, this story. He said, okay, I'm going to do something here. Although I dislike your attitude, I want you to understand that I still love you. And this is what he said. Luke 15, verse 28. The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him. Jesus gives those in this audience who he disagreed with, who he could not support from the standpoint of them holding on to their traditions and their dignity and all these things above seeking him. He gives them a choice and says, hey, although that's where you are, although that's who you are, I want you to understand that I still love you. And at any point that you choose to come in, you're still welcome at the party. So I say that to say this. Some of us are in situations where we may need to confront ourselves. Will you accept the traditions? Have you put yourself up here on the pedestal as a spiritual elite and there's people that you're going to exclude? Is that the Jesus that you've had painted for you? Is that the Jesus that you're painting for other people? The Jesus you're telling your children about? The Jesus you're modeling for other people just by the way that you live? Is that your Jesus? Because for some today, they will cling to their misunderstandings. They will cling to their dignity. They will cling to their traditions, and in doing so, never know the real Jesus. So I'm asking you, as we go through this period of study over the next 3 or 4 weeks, to take the things that you've learned about this man that we call Lord, this man that we call Savior, and put them aside. And go back to this. And see a man who walked into this world and could have been king, but he humbled himself. He washed people's feet. He hung out with the lowlifes. He hung out with people that no one else would give recognition to. He became a servant. God in the flesh. The real Jesus. I encourage you to challenge yourself and ask yourself, all these years, is John Sullivan the imposter? Is that the Jesus I've been accepting? Or do I know and love and serve the real Jesus? If we can help you in any way whatsoever, please let us know as we sing this.